Hello, hello, everybody. This is Star Colata with Architecture Talk Tongue. Today, my guest, Myles Cummings. I'm really excited to have Myles to join me on this podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about pathways in architecture and architecture education as well, since Myles is teaching at a university in England. So thank you so much for joining me, Myles. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm teaching currently at Birmingham City University, where I am in charge of the Foundation in Architecture and Design course, which is a relatively new course. We've been going 3 years now, but it's kept me very busy. And yeah, I mean, prior to that, I have quite a meandering career story. I don't know how much of it you want me to go into, or
anything you want to share. You know, there is so many architects that listen to us that have gone through all sorts of different paths in architecture, so it's always interesting.
Right. Well, I mean, in my case, I started out doing engineering of all things because my dad was an engineer, and you know, there's that a little bit of parental pressure, I suppose, there, but that was a big mistake. Definitely not an engineer. So I realized that after a term or so, and fortunately managed to transfer onto architecture, which kind of came back. Actually, my flatmate was doing product design, you know, and I was really sort of watching what he was doing, thinking that looks fun, sitting, drawing and designing stuff. But I didn't know enough about product design to make such a big leap. So I went into architecture, which at the time, you know, I did know a little bit about, and yeah, and you know, did the degree and the year in practice. At that stage, that's the way we did it. We actually had our year in practice kind of as part of the degree in the third year.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I came back and finished the degree, I decided to have a bit of a, well, I worked for a while, saved some money, and then decided to go around and travel through Asia and all kinds of places. And finally, you know, I mean, at that time it was quite a sort of well-worn sort of hippie trail, they used to call it, you know, down through sort of Turkey and overland, and talking through Asia, and then finally to Australia.
Wow.
Yeah, because at the time, the UK had a sort of reciprocal arrangement with Australia. I don't know if they still have it, where you could do what was called a working holiday.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be, you know, you're only supposed to do it for maximum of a year. I think I stayed 2 in the end. Australia, I kind of liked the life over there. You know, it was nice and sunny, lots of surf and stuff like that. Enjoyed Sydney. I enjoyed the life there very much. And at that time, I also decided to kind of explore a few options outside of architecture, because I'd always been into film and animation and that kind of stuff. But 2 things happened. I did an evening course in animation at Hanna-Barbera studio. And that was great fun, and as a result of that, I actually got a bit of work. And then I also bought a computer, a desktop computer, it was an Amiga 500, which was like, you know, computers are pretty new. We're talking like 1988, 89 here, so quite a while back. And started experimenting a bit with computer animation. And for a while, that's what I really thought I really wanted to do. Was get into that as a thing. And I was looking at doing there was a new course at Dundee University in Scotland in computer animation. There were very few courses around that time. Well, anyway, whatever, it didn't work out quite as I planned. So I decided to just carry on back in completing the architecture studies, but at the same time, sort of, I had the opportunity to play around with computers by that time. college back in Manchester. And so I got really, kind of into that it was my thing. When I finished the diploma, there were no jobs around, actually, in architecture. It was like, we were talking like early 90s. It was like another recession. I've seen about 3 or 4 recessions in architecture coming there. I was like, oh no, it's the end of the world, but actually it brings its own opportunities. What happened with me was that me and 3 guys that I was at college with set up our own practice. And we were just doing competitions and stuff like that. But it was, it was good fun. We got some money from, I think it was Boddington's, who are a brewery, a big brewery in Manchester. And they sort of sponsored this festival every year. I think it was a comedy festival, actually. Or, anyway, some kind of arts, film, comedy kind of festival. We got a bit of money off them to do whatever we wanted, basically. And so off the back of that, I did a bit of, again, film making, like a short film about the Renaissance, really, because at that time it was obviously meant to be very industrial city, but built heritage was all cotton mills and that kind of thing. And it was just coming into a real period of transition. It's amazing now. I forgot about it back then. Bagged actually, I think the first group in Europe outside of London. So, yeah, I don't know, I'm rambling too much. Basically, that's what I was doing, and we were doing competitions and whatever, and I was making films. In fact, we kind of fell out about this, if I'm honest. Like Myles is not doing enough architecture in terms of drawing type stuff. And so eventually I kind of went my own sweet way. And at that time, sort of what they used to call multimedia was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I got offered a job in Germany for a multimedia company on Germany's first CD-ROM.
Yeah.
So it was called Radar. So I was working in a tiny little hamlet in Salford, Germany, near Stuttgart, and it was a lot of fun, actually. Looking back, that was the favourite part of my working life. Kind of, I was doing 3D design, but it was all virtual, so you don't have to worry about building regulations or how anything actually has to stand up. So we were doing crazy stuff, all kinds of science fiction inspired kind of space age environments for people to explore on this CD-ROM. So and then eventually I got kind of sucked into teaching, I suppose, in some ways, and that's kind of been a thing. I always liked teaching, but I always just did it on a part-time kind of basis, so I had a foot in both camps. And then eventually that sort of was brought to a head, and I had to sort of choose in a way. And I've worked at a few different places around the world teaching now. Malaysia and India and Dubai, and now I'm back in Birmingham. So that's me.
Wow, so many amazing travel stories, and I love the sort of diversification of different experiences that you got throughout this journey. And let's start with the first thing. I wonder, why did you feel like engineering wasn't for you? Was it too much maths adding up, or what was it about it that you just felt, no, I don't like engineering?
I mean, it was that, actually. You've hit the nail on it. There was an awful lot of maths.
Yeah.
It was engineering and electronic, so it was kind of a combination of mechanical engineering and electronic engineering. And the electronic engineering bit is lots of mathematical formulas, resistance and capacitors. And I just knew I was way out of my depth, and I found it really boring. So
yeah, yeah, I see. So that's how
so
you thought,
yeah,
okay, architecture will be kind of
yeah.
similar, but without the maths.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I had done maths at A level, so I
Hmm.
was terrible at maths, but I'd never found it easy. And I did
Hmm.
A level art, and that came easier to me. And so when I walked into the architect studio in Manchester for the first time, just to explore the possibility, and as soon as I walked in, it was that vibe reminded me of the art studio back in my old college, and it was like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, I feel more at home here. So
yeah,
this is right. I'll go with my gut, you know. So
yeah.
yeah.
That's
Mm.
amazing. Yeah, and the travel, that must have been very enriching as well. I mean, I think that travels really help to, expand your vision as well with architecture specifically, like to see how architecture is done in other places and the way of thinking about architecture around building as well, and how
Yeah.
people in different cultures interact with building.
Mm.
Is that somehow helpful now when you're a teacher at university? Do you bring a lot of these influences from your travels into the studio?
Yeah, yeah, I probably do. I don't necessarily even consciously do that, but I think
Mhm.
inevitably comes through into your teaching. And I mean, even last week we was doing a project where we were talking about iconic
Mhm.
buildings, you know, Sydney Opera House, obviously, and Eiffel Tower, and all the rest of it. And yeah, the fact that I've been to some of those, most of them actually, is I can sort of spin a yarn around one or two of them anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's really nice.
What one of the things that I used to do when I was traveling was I carried a Super 8 camera film. This is like before
Mhm.
back, you know, now it's so easy. Obviously, we've got mobile phones, but I just carry this Super 8 camera. I don't know if you're familiar, but they come with a cartridge of film, and you get approximately 2 minutes worth of footage out of each cartridge, right?
Mhm.
So when I set off, um, I I was traveling first of all through Europe, and one of my favorite things to do is just basically choose a cafe and sit on the corner and just set the camera up and just hit the button for a few seconds at a time. You know, you shoot a burst of film for a few seconds, and then obviously after a while you've used up the whole cartridge. You used to have to send it to Kodak for processing, and I put the return address as my mum and dad so that they could see where I was, kind of thing,
Yeah,
where I 2 weeks ago, kind of thing. But eventually, when I got back to the UK and all these reels of film were waiting for me, and I spliced them all together, and I had this like amazing sort of time lapse footage of the journey. And I still occasionally use a little clips of that when I'm teaching. So, yeah, so people watching and how they relate to. In that case, in Paris, I was sat outside the Pompidou Centre, watching
yeah.
the later thing. Yeah. So,
That's brilliant. I love these random moments in the cities. When you travel, I'll never forget
mm,
um, visiting, like, for example, in Barcelona, these squares and all the different action there, and especially in the summer when people hang out, it comes to life, and so many different things can happen in the city, and how the public space is occupied.
mhm.
Um, so it's really interesting, and it definitely opens your mind to the different usage of architecture and how people themselves find application for the building that is like spontaneous and maybe not really thought through by an architect to start with, but then it's used that way. Um,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
really interesting.
yeah.
And yeah, it's great because I think that especially with foundation year studies in architecture, it's really important to keep an open mind to a lot of things because you
Mm.
kind of draw inspiration from art. And do you guys have also fashion and other industries, or is it just architecture?
No, we have we're product product stroke furniture, and landscape and interior. Yeah, so those are the 4 disciplines. Fashion have their own foundation course, but they're not part of our well, the one that I run. So yeah. But I know what you're saying, and I think that cross fertilization, they call it, isn't it, is actually a really good thing. Sure.
Exactly. And of course, it's like also that this course specifically is to teach students to see if which of these disciplines is something that they want to take, right? So it's important to keep an open mind, but also to help them somehow like really decide which path it is. And I think it's quite a crucial point in their career, because a lot of times they don't fully know what they're signing up for until they go into the industry. Do you have any ways in which you already address some of the things that, for example, specifically architecture has in the luggage, so to speak, or when you buy that product, what you get with it?
No, yeah.
Those things already.
Well, we try to. I mean, so the thing is, there is, I suppose, at the moment, our course is something like 60% of the students want to pursue architecture, they think, right? Because they have to say at the outset, I'm on the architecture. And then, about 40% interior architecture, and then the rest split between landscape and product and furniture. And actually, there's a new one now called Design for Future Living, which is a brand new course, and sort of, well, you can guess kind of where that's heading. So yeah, and I think with the foundation, the idea is that yes, you can obviously try out all of them, and we do briefs that all of the students, irrespective of the pathway, do that brief, so they get the chance to experience not just the brief and designing for interiors or furniture or whatever it is, but they also get input from those lecturers and the students that are on those courses already, so they get some sense of what it's like beyond the foundation. And some of them do actually change their minds and say, oh, yeah, I really liked the way interiors worked and I want to go and do that instead, or I want to do product or landscape sometimes. Yeah. So, and it's good because I think an awful lot of students, to be honest with you, do come on to architecture in particular with, I suppose a very media influenced view of what architecture is, or what architects do, and that kind of thing. And you know that it's not just always work out like how you expect. So.
Yeah, I think it's really important for students, and I think that in the traditional path of architecture, we don't mention it enough at school, but I think it's important for them to know that, like, if they don't end up being architects, it's not really a failure. Like, more and more so right now, society is sort of blurring the boundaries between the different disciplines, and people more and more so specialized, even cross-disciplinary, but become really good at something, and that makes their expertise. But it doesn't always have to be like strictly architecture or strictly mobility or strictly interior, right? In the case of obviously designing spaces. And I think it's really interesting to like teach students as well that that diversifying is not bad, it's not a bad thing. But a lot of our beliefs about the practice of architecture come actually from school and from university. And a lot of times it's really hard to break them when you're already mature and you graduate and you go to practice. You think that that's how things are done. And a lot of times, like, you push through because you think that if you were to give up, that would be a failure. But it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. And I think that even, the example of your life and the changes and the diversity of experiences with travel also shaped and formed your journey as an architect and now a lecturer. So I think it's just that thing that life is unpredictable and it doesn't always go by the book, but it doesn't mean that like it's a failure anyway to take a break, or for example to say, well, this isn't for me, I'll try something different.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, and I think that is in a way one of the good things about architecture or any design course is it does equip you for exploring these different possibilities, as you say. Yeah, so yeah, unfortunately though, yeah, there is, I think, this idea, especially among some students, that architecture is how to say, you know, the tradition of the chartered architect, you know, is something that they really aspire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the letters after your name, sort of nonsense, I think.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, yeah, and I think anyway that the whole structure of architecture and the architect's registration, and in the UK the RIBA and ARCUC and all the rest of it, is actually in a state of transition itself now as well. You know,
Mm-hmm.
calling yourself an architect and registering with the RIBA and all that kind of thing is, you know, a lot. I don't know how to say this, but you know, I think there's a lot of feeling amongst architects that the RIBA maybe doesn't represent the best vision and future for architecture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. But I think that there is a need for that diversity as well, because more and more people choose different paths to get charted to, and different paths to experience architecture and to practice it. So, there should always be a way in which we can also acknowledge these experiences, because a lot of times people do get to actually practice architecture, but without being charted you can't do it fully and can't get have it recognized. So especially if you do it abroad, the sort of way you translate those experiences between different countries. So yeah, thankfully we have the RIBA to sort of always like provide for these problems and things like that. But I think more and more so, like now, especially with internet, there is a need for cultivating more diversity too, and especially just telling students it's okay to diversify, or it's okay not to, to have to follow that one traditional path, because I think that it can be also a tremendous source of stress for a lot of people, thinking that they have to get chartered, they have to do it right in this way, and if you don't, then it's a failure. Then you're a failure. And I think that is just it happens a lot in in architecture, and it's okay to tell students that the world doesn't end if you don't become an architect, for example, or if you don't get fully chartered but still work in architecture, because there's a lot of things you can do in architecture without designing too.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I think you've wrapped that one up pretty well.
Well, Myles, if people want to find out more about the course or connect with you on social media, where should they find you?
Well, I've got my, the usual Facebook, Myles Cummings, Instagram, Twitter, everything.
And LinkedIn.
I've got one called dronemancer.com because I'm into drones. That's my thing.
Yes, tell us about this. Actually, I remember you mentioned that too.
Yeah, what to say? I started it about 3 years back, and then when I came to Birmingham, actually, they liked that I was doing this and paid for me to go and do the drone pilot qualification.
Oh, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been doing a bit of that. I was doing some yesterday actually nearby. So you'll see that footage up soon of Iron Bridge, the world's first iron bridge.
Oh, wow.
Spectacular place you should visit sometime. So yeah, dronemancer.com, that's my droney stuff, and I have my vlog also on YouTube. So
interesting. That's brilliant. And how has that changed the perception of architecture? Has it added anything to your understanding of cities to be able to see it also through bird's eye view, I guess?
Yeah, well, what I've realized is, stuff always looks good from on high,
Yeah.
even when it's awful on the ground.
Yeah.
That's the thing, with, respect, Birmingham's not the most beautiful city, I don't think, in most people's eyes. But I've captured some pretty, I would say, spectacular images of it at certain times of the day and from certain angles from high up. So, that's a danger, I think. I mean, in a way, it's a bit like rendering, isn't it? Rendering now is so powerful, and you can kind of sell things to look amazing and all the rest of it. But then when you look at it in reality, so to speak, think about the architecture and how that actually affects people, rather than creating a glossy image. I think, those two things. That's what I've learned from droning.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love it. So, what was the YouTube again?
Drone Mancer. Drone Mancer, like, I don't know if you know Neuromancer, the William Gibson book, but that's an interesting book to read for any architecture student, actually, talking about the future and all the rest of it. Yeah, I think he coined the word cyber, didn't he? Anyway, maybe not, but yeah, it's a good book anyway.
Interesting.
Drone Mancer, that's me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Myles, for joining me today.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's really good.
Stories. It's really enjoyable. Thank you guys also for listening. It's lovely to see you here and read your comments as well. Francesca, thank you so much for joining. Lovely comments. And yeah, thanks guys. And we'll see you all on Thursday, tomorrow as well. I have a guest at 5 p.m. And for anyone who's listening on other platforms and hasn't yet subscribed to YouTube, go to YouTube at Sarah Kalata and subscribe, and also click the little bell icon for notifications whenever we do live, so you can join us as well and listen to it. Thank you so much, Myles, again, and guys, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.